This morning, I've got the real privilege to speak with Taleb Rifai, who's currently in the south of Spain, and lots of sunshine there, Taleb. Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Taleb, what I want you to do is just fill you in on what we're thinking of doing over the next couple of years. You will remember that 2022 will be the 20th anniversary of the Cape Town Declaration. This year at WTM, we're very focused on the crisis and the ways in which tourism can bounce back. Next year, we're going to take that round the various regional shows. So we'll be taking it to Cape Town, Dubai, Sao Paulo, and then back to London at the end of the year. But then in 2022, Taleb, we want to have a big event at WTM London, looking back at 20 years of responsible tourism. And I thought it'd be really good to hear from you where you think responsible tourism has got to over the last 18 years. What's your perspective on it now?
Thank you so much, Harold. I think we've come a long way. 2002 seems like a long time ago. It's only yesterday, truly. I think we've come a long way in terms of building consciousness, building awareness, and doing something about it. We cannot separate what we're talking about from COVID-19 and the crisis we're passing through, because the world before COVID is going to be different from the world after COVID. But I truly believe that it's an opportunity and a chance for us in all aspects. You know, the Chinese language have the word crisis and the word opportunity in one word. They don't have used two different words, which is very wise, as Chinese always are. Now, why am I saying this? Because there are many, many opportunities that are coming out of this COVID-19 issue, particularly when it comes to responsible tourism. Now, tourism has been going in a growth in a very impressive way in the last 20 years, but we have not been looking at the responsible tourism in a serious way, because of the greed and because of the business considerations there. So we've got things like over-tourism and mass tourism and all of this, which has destroyed much of what we have, basically. But when was the last time that the people of Benin saw the dolphins playing in their backyard? Or the people of Kenya would say that we have doubled our rhino population from 400 to 800. It's a break that the world took to think of where it's going. Not just in a responsible tourism way, but in all responsibilities, including political responsibility. I believe, for example, in tourism, we have two major opportunities here. One is emphasis on domestic tourism. I think domestic tourism has been suffering a lot, especially in developing countries. Look at the United States, you look at Europe, 75% of its traffic is local. But you look at countries like in Africa, in Asia, they're so much dependent on long-haul travel and foreign tourists. A visitor comes with blue eyes, blonde hair. He's treated like God on earth, while the people of the country don't know what they're doing there. So domestic tourism is an opportunity for us now to see and experience the country. I always believe that a country that's not seen and experienced and lived in by its own people cannot and should not be experienced by anybody else from the outside. It's our opportunity now to fix what has been in need for fixing a long time ago. It's not just fixing it now because we need it, it's because it's a matter of principle to me. Because domestic tourism does contribute to social and economic responsibility very much. I know that domestic tourism is not easy in small countries and in beach and resorts and things like this that are so dependent on people coming from long haul to visit them. And it's not useful, it's not as useful so much in terms of foreign exchange or hard currency, but it does keep facilities open and it does keep jobs going on, which is a major challenge in today's world. Jobs are very important. So domestic tourism is one thing. Another thing is, if we want to start with international tourism, which I think is step 2, not step 1, should never bypass domestic and regional tourism, especially in countries like in Africa or in Asia or Latin America. They have to start depending on themselves a bit more. This needs a complete change of mind, complete mindset. Our tour operators have to think differently because, you know, domestic crowd usually doesn't have the same financial capabilities, doesn't have the same needs, doesn't speak the same language as they're promoting. They need to think in a different way, Harold. They need to see the world in a different way, cater for their own people first. But having said this, if you want to move into international tourism, There is something called digital nomads now, which is a very, very interesting concept. It's a concept of young people traveling and going to places just to make work from there, because distant working from a distance is now a fashion. So you don't have to stay in New York or Paris or London. You can go and spend your time in the Caribbean or in the Dead Sea in Jordan or here in Marbella, anywhere you want. Hotels can start catering for those people. In other words, long-term stay could become a more feasible thing over numbers. Instead of having 1 million people, you could have 100,000 people that stay 10 times as much long-term stay. That's what should be the aims and the goals of our industry. That's where we've come as a result of COVID-19. Now, with regard to the 2022, which is the 20th anniversary, I'm all for supporting that. I think we've come a long way, and this crisis has helped us to understand the world a little bit better, look at it in a different way. We've seen blue skies as never before. We've seen people moving in their own countries as never before. All of this is responsible tourism. We need to highlight this. We have these 2 years to work on that. Highlighting what has been achieved, I think, is a very, very important fact. Thank you.
Taleb, your use of that Chinese, the fact they use crisis for both crisis and opportunity is, I think, quite interesting, because the other piece of Chinese language which is often quoted is the curse. May you live in interesting times. But of course, interesting times are the times when you can make change. It is now that we have the opportunity, isn't it? And I share that enthusiasm with you. I assume that part of the problem, if you look back over the last 40 years, was that too often tourism was seen as a development strategy, but seen as that mainly by the finance ministry, so that foreign exchange earnings became far more important than length of stay, yield, and employment, which would have been different ways of measuring the impact, wouldn't it?
It would have. If you add on to that the fact that tourism was never taken that seriously by governments anyhow. So it was going by its own logic. It was going simply by what I would call, with all due respect, greed and business only, business-driven agenda. The government did not interfere much in that. So that, again, not just the Ministry of Finance, as you correctly said, would have looked at it just as a foreign currency earn. It didn't even see it as such until lately. That's why when we were in UNWTO, we started something called the Open Book, the open letter that we sent to all heads of states, trying to educate them on how important tourism is. Because unless governments take tourism seriously, they will never see it as part of the development agenda. They will always see it as a byproduct, taking care of itself, as if governments have nothing to do with it. It's something that the private sector has to develop on its own, which is a dangerous symptom as well.
Yeah, so one of the things which I think, looking back on the Cape Town Declaration, which after all was written by a conference, so it does contain some real gems and a couple of anomalies, but one of the gems was the question of whether you were going to allow your place to be used by tourism, in other words, be used by the outsiders who would come to make profit, or whether you would use tourism to benefit the local community. And I see a political shift there, Taleb, now, with more concern about using tourism rather than being used by it.
Absolutely, absolutely. The fact that people are not able to travel now by air as easily as they used to do before has written it a new dimension to the whole thing. Now people are beginning to look at themselves from the inside. It's one of the benefits of COVID. Of course, I'm not saying that COVID is good. I'm just saying that there are some benefits that we could look into and see. Look into yourself first. How can a country receive anybody from outside if the people of that country don't know it, don't have any knowledge of it, no culture of it, and not enjoying it, actually? What happens is that we have developed a very unhealthy relationship between the local community and the foreigners. The walls have become higher between the two communities. That's not good. There are people that are serving only the rich people of the world, coming to them. That's not right. We should all be equal when we come. And the foreigner visitor wants to see the authentic, the real people. They don't want to see anybody putting up a show for them.
One of the things I think has also happened, Taleb, I agree with all of that. And I think the other thing that's happened is that we've seen the way in which local populations respond to the challenge of COVID. And we see it on our TV screens, in the news, and in the feature pages and the news pages of the newspapers. And clearly in some societies, there's much more willingness, for example, to wear a mask to benefit other people. And in some societies, there's much less willingness to do that. And people will remember those images of people behaving differently in different parts of the world for a very long time. They will form people's opinion of those countries, won't they?
Yeah, they would. You know, countries are now divided into two parts. Some countries are very heavily affected by COVID, and some countries are slightly affected. Look at Africa, look at some of the island countries. They're promoting themselves now as corona-free zones. That's a bit dangerous.
Yes.
Because when you are corona-free, and then you start getting people without the right procedures in place, opening it up just without any limits, you're going to get in trouble. I know in Jordan, for example, where I'm residing now, we were having 0 cases for 10 days, 12 days. Then we started to have 1 or 2 cases. Today, we're in the thousands in cases every day.
Yeah.
Why? Because we rushed into opening our borders without being scrutinized about it. So it's important to look at that and see how we're going to deal with it.
I have to say, I live in a small town, Taleb, of 20,000 people.
Yeah.
And it is very noticeable that when we have an antiques market on the first Sunday of the month, and it attracts a lot of people in from outside of the town, the behavior is very different. You know, when it's just, as it were, us, people are behaving in a far more sensible way in the context of COVID. And that also affects, it's not just about the international visitors, it's about who you want to invite in from the area around you. And I think that people are very conscious of that now.
Yeah. You know, for example, in Jordan, we have the region of Aqaba, which is in the south of Jordan.
Yeah.
It was absolutely corona-free. Now it's not anymore because everybody wants to go to Aqaba, even internally. And that has changed the situation there, of course. So you have to be very careful about this. Wearing a mask or washing your hands or keeping a social distance is now seen as if it's an extraordinary precaution. It's going to become our norm, our new norm. I still remember the days when we used to take off from our cars and take off the steps, go to an aeroplane without having to go to any metal detectors, take off your shoes, take off your belt and everything.
Yeah.
Today, I don't think we can walk around without having a mask. I think it's become a norm. And it's not something that we cannot do. You know, in China, Japan, and Korea, for example, they wear masks even any time. They did that before Corona. If you have a cold, because it's out of respect to others. In Korea, for example, you can't enter a house before taking off your shoes outside. That's part of their tradition. I think we have to learn from these cultures. Even when they say hello, they just don't shake hands. They just go like this.
Yeah.
It's something to think about, really. I think going back to where we were is not an option anymore.
No, I think a lot has fundamentally changed. Taleb, if I may, I'd like to be able to interview you every 6 months between now and 2022, and perhaps we can work together to make 2022 a rallying cry for more responsibility in tourism. I think we need to push that agenda forward, and I'd very much welcome your support in doing that.
I'll be more than happy to do this. One of the other advantages of Corona is having more time at hand. You're at home. You don't have to travel. So you could go on Zoom and do so many things. So I'm under your disposal, really, Harold. You're a person I respect very much. And your work is very, very important. Thank you so much once again.
Taleb, on the contrary, thank you for your contribution.
Thank you.
They were great days when you were Secretary General, and I enjoyed working with you on quite a lot of different projects. And let's work together to keep pushing the agenda forward.
We will. We have a responsibility to do that.
We do.
Yeah.
Taleb, thank you very much for your time this morning.
You're most welcome, Harold. Take care of yourself. Bye.
And you take care of you.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.